Thank you so much for being here, Ms. Pringle. Appreciate your time. So let's first talk about these CDC guidelines for teachers, because, the teachers I know are nervous, very nervous about having in-person classes again because of fear of obviously catching COVID. Do you think the CDC guidelines are clear enough and they make you feel comfortable with the idea of teachers going back?
First of all, Joy, it is so good to be with you. I'm a little late to the party saying congratulations, but thank you for bringing voice to those
Thank you.
issues that are so important to Americans. We are very encouraged, Joy, by the CDC guidelines because they make clearer what we've been saying for the better part of a year. And you could probably recite it with me, Joy. I bet you could, that we need to wear masks. And they're very clear about that. They're not giving any room for whether you should or shouldn't or how you should wear them. You heard Dr. Walensky say they should be required. That's very different than what it's been before. And of course, socially distancing. And she also was very clear about this, Joy, especially in those communities where the rate is high. It should be at least 6 feet. And of course, disinfecting it and making sure we can test and trace and making sure we can isolate. All of those things, they are much clearer about. So there just really is no excuse why our schools, our students, our educators aren't getting what they need.
Well, and one of the things that I would think that people might need, I mean, I went to school in Denver, Colorado. We had a brand newish building, where my kids went to school in Florida was pretty new buildings. But I know in places like New York, go to places like the Bronx, places in Brooklyn, the schools are like really old buildings. They're in buildings that don't have maybe the most modern, HEPA systems. And to retrofit those schools where a lot of children of color are going to school, that's going to cost money. Do you feel comfortable that there's enough money coming for those older buildings to be safe enough in terms of ventilation?
Yeah, of course, there's not enough money, Joy. I went to the Philadelphia public schools and started teaching there. And we've seen pictures of their idea of ventilation being fans. And in so many of our schools, we have windows that don't even open. So where are we putting the fans to have that ventilation that we need? So you are absolutely right. And Joy, this. We've been talking about school infrastructure for how long? Decades. We already had sick buildings that were making especially Black and brown students sick before the coronavirus. And now we're asking them to go back into those buildings without getting the proper resources in place. So we're encouraged, Joy, we are encouraged by the recovery plan. But here's the thing. The CDC has laid out the guidelines, and now it's time to take action. It's time for Congress to act. We've been waiting for 11 months, still no money.
Yeah. And there, what's happening, of course, the politics creep in. And for a lot of Republicans, the teachers unions are like the boogeyman, right? You guys are their favorite target. And they're sort of trying to portray the teachers union as being the thing that's standing between these students and being able to get back to school. And they're trying to use that as a wedge issue. What do you say to those who are starting to think, well, maybe the teachers unions are standing in the way of my kid going back to school?
A couple of things I want to say about that, Joy. First of all, teacher unions are made up of educators, and not just teachers, by the way. That we have bus drivers and paraprofessionals and nurses and counselors, all of those adults who are making sure that students are learning and being safe every day. They make up the teachers union. They make up the union of educators. And I want to share this with you. You may know this too, Joy, that recent polls by both Huffington Post and by Education Next said that the confidence in teacher unions has grown over the pandemic. And you know why? Because they're looking to us not only to get information, Joy, but also to advocate for our students. And most especially, and Joy, you know this is true, and it's always the case. So our Black and brown and indigenous communities have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and all of the crises that it spawned. And now here we are. We are in those schools that you just described to it. We have the least amount of capability of actually having resources to put in place these mitigation strategies the CDC says must be in place. We absolutely need Congress to act so that we can provide our students with what they need. The question is, Joy, it's not about whether this country has the wealth. It's about whether this country has the will to take care of all of our babies.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.